I want to talk about this guy.
All right.
You know him?
Yeah,
Perfect.
I grew up with him.
Yeah. So who are you, and where are you from? Just let's go back.
All right. Well, I was born in Studio City.
Mm-hmm.
I still live in Studio City. I've never changed zip codes. My wife came from Minnesota, and I said we can live anywhere in the world as long as it was Studio City, and so she agreed with that. And I grew up in a show business family.
Mm-hmm.
My father was a pretty prominent writer, producer, as my uncles were. They started off like writing for all the old comedians. We're talking Milton Berle and Jackie Gleason, and
Wow.
my dad did Red Skelton and Arthur and Groucho Marx and all that.
We have the Milton Berle show on Momi too.
Oh, do you?
We do.
Okay, my uncle probably wrote that.
Very cool.
Some of that, yeah, yeah. And so that was kind of, they didn't bring it home very much. My dad didn't. He was a regular 50s kind of father, came home, and my wife, because my mother was there with a drink for him and all that, slippers or whatever that is from those days.
Yep.
And eventually, in terms of my career, I didn't start off working with him. I was always writing in high school and in college and kind of doing my own thing. And in college, I actually started with a black-white comedy team. And he was a Black Panther. And we were thrown out of many clubs in Los Angeles doing very risky kind of stuff. And we got in trouble with the government and the FBI and the CIA. And there were murders involved in it. And it was it was the 60s.
You went viral before you could go viral.
Yeah, yeah. So I met like Martin Luther King through him and Bobby Kennedy, and it was I can go through a whole college life, which was very bizarre, and it was at UCLA, and I was a cheerleader, and John Wooden, and Kareem, and I was supposed to room with Kareem, and my life has been pretty eclectic.
Yeah. So you went to UCLA then?
You went to UCLA.
Yeah. I'd love to get to know a little bit about you as Lloyd growing up too. So like, what were you kind of like? I mean, you obviously were a writer, but what were you kind of like? Were you always that comedian type?
It's a funny thing. We don't look at ourselves that way. I mean, my personality was what it was, and I remember, in grammar school and stuff, and I would do skits, and it always seemed like just the thing we should be doing. And then I ran into, when I was coach of one of my son's basketball, little peewee basketball thing, and I ran into a woman who was a mother of a kid way back, or she wasn't a mother, she was in my grammar school class. And she said, "You haven't changed at all." And I said, "Well,
you were the class clown, huh?"
I guess I was.
But to you, it's just like, I'm just being myself. This is my personality, and
that's right. And then even in college, when I was an English major, and I took all my electives were all in theater and television, rather.
Yeah,
television. And it came easily to me. And I also couldn't understand, I was in a fraternity, why anybody wouldn't be doing this. I mean, and why they found it difficult. And at that same time, then I started working. I was a summer camp counselor, but I also did dialogue coach. Dad asked me to do dialogue coach a little bit on Gilligan's Island. And then on another show he did called It's About Time. So I worked with Imogene Coca, which was great.
Yeah.
And then when he was going to do the Brady Bunch, I was already written for Love American Style. And I was doing this comedy. And he said, "I want you to be on the Brady Bunch." And I said, "I don't want to do that." He said, "Well, I know, but I've got these 6 kids going to be in the show." And I said, "No, I'm going to do my own thing."
Yeah. I don't want to do what you're doing.
No. And I said, "You're only giving that because I'm your son anyway, and I don't want to do that." And he said, "Okay, describe who should do this. Who should be dialogue coach for these kids?" And I said, "Well, you should find somebody who's worked with kids." And he said, "Well, you ran a summer camp."
Yep.
I said, "Yeah." He said to somebody, I said, "You get somebody who's been a dialogue coach before." And he said, "Well, you did that." And someone who's been a performer, and you did that. And I have a degree in writing. And he said, "Okay, I'll do it."
Sounds like Dad did his homework.
Well, yeah. Well, I'd come home and I'd tell him about it.
Yeah. I mean, Sherwood was a pretty smart man.
Very smart man. But I said, "Here's the deal." And this is kind of interesting. I said, "I will only do this show and work on this show if I can continue doing my own things." And he said, "Okay." And I said, "I'll be working very hard for you, but I got to do my own things." He said, "Okay." And I said, "Also, you can never know where I live." And he thought, and my mother especially thought that was a little weird. I said, here's the deal. If I'm working with you 5 days a week and you're my parents also, and I see you like on a weekend, there's just got to be someplace where you're not.
Yes.
And they completely, they never knew where I lived for a year, and it was not that far away from them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And my wife and I live in Orange County.
Right.
And my family's all in LA. And we all kind of work with each other in a sense. Like my father's a distributor, and so I get content from his company for Momi too. And so I do deal with them. It is nice to not be near them sometimes because, you kind of break away the work thing and the family thing, but then we also love getting together as a family.
Right.
And so I can feel that. I totally understand that.
Right. It worked very well for us.
Thanks for spending your time with us today on the More For Me and You podcast. If you've made it to the end, we appreciate you. Now, go do us a quick favor. Please like, comment, and share this episode. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode with the incredible guests we have coming up. You can also follow us at Momi2 Podcast on Instagram and on TikTok. Oh, and for your next movie night, check out the Momi2 app. It's free and packed with amazing movies and shows you've probably never seen. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you in the pod.